Despite the national championship game being played in Atlanta tomorrow night, the Midwest is the heart of the game. And as Mark Kunz and Dave Briggs discuss, Toledo, 140-some miles from both South Bend and Columbus, may just be the epicenter of the sport.
Toledo's the front line between Ohio State and Michigan in their annual war. It's also the front line between Notre Dame and Ohio State as they meet for the national championship on Monday night, joined now by Dave Briggs from the Toledo Blade. And Dave, it's very fascinating because we know there's a ton of Notre Dame fans in Toledo, a ton of Ohio State fans. Everybody's kind of got a rooting interest on Monday.
Absolutely. I mean, short of Ohio State, Michigan, this is the dream title matchup for Northwest Ohio. And yeah, I mean, Ohio State's obviously the dominant team in our market, and Michigan's number 2. I mean, the MAC teams are in their own category, but Notre Dame's a clear 3. I mean, there's a lot of Notre Dame fans. I mean, just look at, obviously, big Catholic population. Central Catholic is Fighting Irish. St. John's Jesuit, blue and gold. It just kind of permeates every walk of life here. And yeah, two teams with huge fan bases in Northwest Ohio coming down to the South. Doesn't get any better than that.
You listen to Marcus Freeman, and it's like you're transported back in time, and you're listening to many of the same phrases that Jim Tressel said. In reality, is something that both said quite a bit. And in reality, this is a fundamentally sound Notre Dame team that, similar to the 2002 Ohio State team, they have found ways to win games that perhaps they shouldn't have won, but they've got a lot of confidence in themselves going into this game.
Absolutely. I mean, it's... Yeah, I mean, everybody's talking about Ohio State as kind of this team on paper. Not even God can sink this ship. But, yeah, Notre Dame is a lot of confidence, big-time defense, second only to Ohio State in points allowed nationally. They live on creating the turnover, plus 15 margin. In the end, it's hard to see Notre Dame, especially with their battered offensive line, being able to move the ball against Ohio State's defense. And on the flip side, it's not hard to imagine Ohio State hitting its share of big plays against Notre Dame's man coverage. So I just see more paths for Ohio State to win, but absolutely, this is more of a challenge than I think people think.
Finally, we have to touch on the fact that this is the first 12-team playoff. This is a very different college football landscape, and part of that is reflected at the 2 quarterbacks. Riley Leonard was at Duke last year. Will Howard, of course, at Kansas State. Both highly regarded transfers who have come in, and maybe you want to call them a hired gun, but they've got their teams playing for a national title.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's interesting. Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman at the press conference were talking today that,
we want to major in recruiting and minor in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have – everybody's talking about Ohio State brought in all these transfers, and I believe they brought in 9. I think Notre Dame brought in 8 this year. Seven, and yeah. So these are still teams that are developed from within. I saw some Notre Dame fan sites that Ohio State's team is bought, Notre Dame's is built. That's really not the narrative that is true in reality. But yeah, I mean, where would these teams be without Riley Leonard or Will Howard? Yeah, both great additions and both certainly reflective of this new era.
Ohio State has won the last 6 meetings between the Buckeyes and Notre Dame, and outside of last year's game in South Bend, none of those games have been close, as Ohio State has controlled the rivalry ever since it was renewed in the mid-90s. I want to thank Dave Briggs from the Toledo Blade for joining us. Of course, he'll have full coverage on the Ohio State-Notre Dame game on the Blade in the online editions. Thank you for joining us, Dave, as we continue on the road with the Buckeyes in Atlanta.